That Minnesota fraud case, $250 million. Everyone's acting like it's shocking.
It's not shocking. It's expected. This is the third time in 5 years.
The question isn't how it happened. It's why the same design keeps getting deployed.
Because it works. Not for preventing fraud, for surviving exposure. Minnesota isn't the first. It won't be the last. When people see fraud this size, they look for villains. But the pattern isn't criminal. It's architectural. Payments move fast. Verification lags. By the time enforcement arrives, the money is gone.
So, the system isn't failing. The leak is the design.
Not through conspiracy, through incentive structure.
Most of the fraud came from one community, tight networks. That's not random.
Information spreads through trust. Always has. When someone discovers a loophole, they don't announce it publicly. They tell the people closest to them, people who share language and share risk. That's not ethnicity, that's network physics. People always mistake the second for the first.
So any tight network would show the same pattern. Church groups, veteran circles, financial insiders. The structure is the same.
Yes, the clustering follows the trust topology, not the demographic.
Then, why does it feel ethnic when it surfaces?
Because you're seeing the network, not the cause. Once fraud clusters, it looks like the group is the problem, but the group is just where the leak showed up. The real failure was the pipe.
But regulators knew. There were warnings. So either corruption or the incentives are so broken it doesn't matter which.
Incentives. Regulators are judged on whether the money went out fast and whether they avoided denying eligible people. They are not judged on accuracy in real time.
Pay now, sort it out later, and later never comes.
Rarely. The whole apparatus is optimized for throughput. Fraud prevention would mean slowing payments and saying no more often. From a career perspective, blocking legitimate aid is loud and immediate. Fraud is abstract and delayed. No complex institution operates without loss. The question is what kind of loss it tolerates.
So the failure isn't a bug. It's load-bearing.
Yes, because enforcement is structurally lagging. Investigations happen years later. Recoveries are marginal. That lag is by design, not accident. And by then, everyone involved has moved on. The program continues.
And responsibility scatters across so many hands that it lands nowhere.
No single signature looks fatal. Discretion is buried under process. By the time fraud explodes, there's no hand on the lever. That's not accidental. That's institutional self-defense. Every bureaucracy learns this eventually.
But someone benefits when fraud this big gets exposed. Not the fraudsters. The cleanup industry.
Yes, direct corruption exists, but it's not the dominant mechanism. The real money flows through outsourcing. Every federal program creates a permanent ecosystem around itself. And the irony is, fraud is what keeps that ecosystem funded. Scandal creates demand. Demand creates contracts. All legal, all defensible.
So the people cleaning up the mess benefit from the mess existing. Sometimes they're the same people who designed the rules in the first place.
That's the shape of it. Rules that look strict on paper but are porous in practice. Not because anyone says so, because loose rules create future need. Failure creates demand. Success eliminates it.
So the system doesn't break. It fails just enough.
Correct. That's managed failure.
So, if fraud actually disappeared, the whole apparatus shrinks with it.
If fraud were actually minimized, the urgency that funds the ecosystem disappears. But if fraud is visible and ongoing, technically complex, never quite catastrophic, then every cycle renews the mandate. This is why fraud never quite disappears. It's more valuable managed than solved.
So what happens when it gets exposed?
The same thing every time. I could tell you the timeline before it happens. A few actors are charged. Enough to signal action. Not enough to change incentives. Then narrative reset. Lessons learned. New safeguards announced. Media moves on. Same architecture, same incentives. So the pattern reappears. Unless the incentives themselves shift.
Because every time it gets exposed, the response targets the actors, not the structure.
Exactly. Reform fails when it leaves incentives intact. You can replace every person in the system. If the design still rewards throughput over accuracy, the same pattern returns.
So it's not that reform is blocked by the people running it. It's that reform keeps aiming at the wrong layer.
Yes, the system doesn't hold because someone is protecting it. It holds because the cost of maintaining failure is still lower than the cost of correcting it. So instead, you get procedural adjustments. Motion without change.
And as long as failure stays cheaper than fixing, nothing moves.
That's how it survives.
Then it just keeps going. Fails, gets exposed, absorbs it, continues. And we're just inside it.
Everyone is. That's not the problem. The problem is thinking you're watching from outside.
But people see this pattern. Why doesn't anything change?
Because most people are in survival mode. When you're fighting to keep what you have, structural reform is a luxury you can't reach. Choice requires margin. Survival offers none.
So the people most affected can't organize. The people designing the fixes are insulated from consequences.
Those with leverage can afford to wait. Those without it adapt and endure. That asymmetry is permanent. It's older than democracy.
Nothing changes because the people who could change it don't need to. And the people who need it can't. Then what's left? If reform means restructuring the incentives that make failure profitable, and no one inside has reason to do that,
then it doesn't get dismantled. The assumption behind reform is that the system has deviated from its purpose, that someone built it right and it drifted. But what if it didn't drift? What if the gap between what it says and what it does is the design working correctly?
the system isn't broken. It was never whole.
Broken implies a prior state worth restoring. If that state never existed, repair isn't the right frame. Not because anyone designed it to fail, because no one is positioned to pay the cost of making it work. The system isn't working against anyone. It's just not working for anyone either.
That's harder than broken.
It is. Because it means the people waiting for it to be fixed are waiting for something that was never on offer.
And knowing that doesn't make it easier.
No. But it changes what you spend yourself on. Once you see the architecture clearly, you stop arguing with what it produces, not because you accept it, because you stop being surprised by it. And that's where clarity actually starts. Not as a weapon, not as a fix, as the moment you stop explaining the system to itself.
After all, this isn't about Minnesota.
No. Minnesota is just where it surfaced this time.
The fraud isn't the scandal.
No. The response is. Because it means the design was never meant to prevent it.
So there's nothing to do.
There's nothing to fix if you're looking for someone to blame. But the failure points are structural. They always were.
And now we see them.
That was what was missing.